They ran it over 5 times, and each time I rebuilt it stronger, not because I cared about the mail, but because some battles ain't about letters, they are about lines you don't let anyone cross. The mid-morning sun was drifting low over the horizon, painting long, golden shadows across the dusty ranch road as I stood on the porch, sipping the remains of my lukewarm coffee. Morning had slipped into afternoon without me noticing, lost somewhere between the silence of the sagebrush and the lazy hum of the cicadas that carpeted the fields. I liked it that way. In this corner of the world, time moved at its own pace. Not the rush and fuss variety of the outside world. But that illusion vanished in an instant, like dust kicked up by a thunderstorm. When the rumble on the gravel grew louder, the rumble wasn't thunder, it was one of the HOA patrol SUVs, glinting in the sunlight with its pristine white paint job, barreling down the private lane like it owned the place. They patrolled the ranch roads frequently, issuing citations for untrimmed hedges and authorized paint colors, weed heights that crept an inch over their idea of acceptable. They took pride in 2 things: enforcing rules and crushing spirit. That's the feeling I'd felt when they'd shown up before, harassing neighbors over border signs or chicken coops. But this time, I wasn't on the porch looking for trouble. I was staring at my mailbox, my emblem of home, that had spent the night upright, and now lay like a fallen soldier on the side of the road. Thud. A dull, final sound, the kind that lodges in your head. I nearly choked on coffee. The SUV didn't even slow. It just rolled over the mailbox with an almost smug confidence, then powered off down the road, kicking up gravel the whole way. No flashes. No siren. Just a casual stroll like nothing had happened. My heart sank. I broke into a run toward the driveway, nearly tripping over my own boots. A glance down the long lane confirmed it. They were gone, but the damage was done. Almost 2 decades I'd called this place home. Born and raised out here, built everything with my own 2 hands. Fences. Outbuildings. A life grounded in sweat and grit. That mailbox was more than a receptacle for bills, it was a landmark, one of the first things I put up when I bought this ranch. Number 1687. A simple black post and wooden box, topped with a red flag. Clean paint, tidy fillet, no fuss. And yet, the HOA treated it like a speed bump. It wasn't just the fence I'd built with sweat and nails, it was everything. The same HOA that had allowed a pristine gated entrance and velvet-trimmed private paths now showed up in their SUVs, knocking down my mailbox 6 times over the past few months. Each time, I replaced it. Each time, they hit it again. The first 3 times, I chalked it up to accidents. But then came the 4th, followed by a letter from HOA Patrol saying, in passive-aggressive capital letters, "We will not be held responsible for damage to unsecured structures." As if I'd left it waving in the wind. As if I hadn't paid my dues. I shook my head as I approached the wreckage. Splintered wood. Bent metal. Screws all over the ground. The little flag was still upright, defiant as ever, as though mocking me even in destruction. I bent down to pick up the flagstick. My hand closed around it, and I felt a surge of frustration. Enough was enough. My wife, Sandy, stepped out onto the porch behind me. She'd heard the commotion, or maybe she just knew this happened again. "All right?" Again, she asked, her voice low but carrying that pinch in her tone, that mix of annoyance and tired resignation. "Yeah," I said, lifting the mangled post in my arms. It felt heavier now than ever. 5th time in 4 months. Sandy frowned. "Did they say anything?" "Nothing this time. They just drove off like they didn't know what hit them." She watched me stand still, staring at the wreckage. "You going to keep replacing it?" I hesitated. "I don't know. I could. But at this point, what's the point?" She didn't answer. After a moment of silence, she turned and went back inside. I carried the remnants to the barn, thinking I'd figure something out. I had plenty of tools and time. What I didn't have was another mailbox to watch get crushed. Over the next few days, I played the role of the concerned rancher in HOA meetings, if you could call them meetings. They were more like emphasis on propriety gatherings, where folks reminded each other of the rules with that awkward etiquette of a garden club. No talk of water usage, cattle health, or wildfire protection, just mulch color charts and uniform shrubbery. I raised the mailbox issue 3 times. Each time, I got a different excuse. They blamed loose gravel, surprise turns, standard patrol route. Once someone suggested maybe I park my tractor on the wrong side of the driveway, forcing the patrol to swerve. I didn't say anything, but inside I was seething. They nodded politely. They apologized with that kind of vague, hollow sincerity people offer when they don't intend to act. Then they moved on. One lady asked if the mailbox color conformed to the approved palette. I nearly burst out laughing. Purple squirrels might be next for discussion. I came home every evening, tearing apart fence posts and stacking firewood to blow off steam. Then I drive down to inspect the mailbox plot. Rusting screws, wet wood, gravel stains the color of bruises. It dragged me down. I hated it. That mailbox symbolized my ranch, my ownership, my sense of place, and the HOA was stomping right over it, one armored SUV at a time. By the end of the week, I'd had enough. I grabbed an old pad of paper and sketched ideas. Reinforced steel post, concrete base, something that said, "Don't mess with this." I needed not just a mailbox, but a statement. That weekend, I disappeared into the barn. Inside, it smelled like oil and sweat and stale hay. I flipped on the overhead light and got to work. I measured, cut, shaped. I scavenged leftover steel plate from an old trailer I'd disassembled last winter, found scrap truck axles that weighed more than I could comfortably lift but knew would anchor the structure. I mixed concrete in a wheelbarrow and poured it into a wooden form I built myself, with a buried anchor to bolt a 4x4 steel post into the earth. Then I welded cross-bracing frames, bolted plates, and built a rugged mailbox box itself, thick steel walls, a heavy-duty hinge, finished in matte black to cut glare. Underneath, a heat shrink sensor that flipped one switch when pressure was applied incorrectly. On top, I mounted a tiny GoPro, hidden behind a carved reflector piece. It would film anything that hit it. Evidence, the word buzzed in my head. I worked late into Saturday night and much of Sunday. I had cuts on my hands, grease under my fingernails, and more sawdust in my hair than I'd ever found in a lumberyard. But by Sunday evening, there it was. I stood back, wiped my brow, and stared at it. I called it the Sentinel. A steel-reinforced post anchored deep in concrete, 400 pounds of good luck trying. As I thought, a rugged mailbox box built to hold up to a small truck collision. A GoPro hidden behind a reflector to catch their license plate and helmet badge, just in case, wooden cladding around the base to keep it looking ranch appropriate. And not some tactical installation. It looked like a ranch mailbox, until it didn't. It looked official enough to blend in, but tough enough to laugh in the face of HOA SUVs. Sandy came out to inspect it in the fading daylight. She sipped her tea and said, "That is a statement." "It needs to make a statement," I replied quietly. "I'm done replacing the same mailbox on repeat." She looked at me, sharp-eyed now. "Are you sure you want to do this?" "Yeah." I shrugged. "I just want them to stop." "How long do you think it'll take?" "Hard to say." That night, I went inside, legs sore and pride burning. Nothing else disturbed the barn. The Sentinel waited quietly at the fence's edge. The calm before the storm. For the next few days, I waited. I painted some trim, fixed a fence panel, dug a new trough for the cattle. I tried to keep my mind off it. Then came Wednesday afternoon. I just returned from a morning of checking troughs and repairing gates. That's when I saw it again, the black and white SUV riding up the dusty lane, low engine rumble fine and steady. Patrol was on the move. The familiar feeling returned, like a heavy weight settling into my chest. I hunched down behind the front porch railing, coffee in one hand, rifle, I had one for coyotes, in the other, just in case. I watched as the SUV slowed near the driveway. The driver's window rolled down a few inches. I couldn't hear them over the engine buzz, but I saw a hand wave. Polite, confident, like nothing had happened. As if I hadn't watched them flatten my last mailbox. I stepped out, carefully descending the porch stairs. The SUV shifted slightly forward. The headlights glinted off my steel Sentinel. The driver jerked the wheel 1 inch to the left, enough to angle toward the mailbox. My heart hit my ribs. This was it. Crunch.